Denzel Washington thought he was stepping onto a stage built for his redemption arc. What he didn't know was that Kash Patel had arrived first, armed with 2 decades of receipts, scars that hadn't faded, and a sentence sharp enough to unravel the show before the first question even dropped. The Emergency Constitutional Summit wasn't officially a duel. It was billed as a conversation about the limits of executive authority. But the moment the camera swept across the room, it became clear. This was going to be a reckoning. Moderator Kristen Welker took her seat with the precision of someone who already knew the headlines had been written. Tonight, she said, we ask one question. What defines the limits of a leader? And who enforces them when institutions go silent? Denzel leaned forward, hands clasped like a commander before battle. The institutions collapsed because they were brittle, he said. I stepped in. I led. Not with permission, with purpose. Kash Patel didn't interrupt. He waited. Then, like a surgeon, his words came, slow, precise, cutting. You didn't lead through failure, Denzel. You exploited it. You saw a vacuum and called it destiny. Denzel smirked. Says the guy who let defense contractors write the manual while he played chess behind the curtain. I cleaned up the chaos you left behind. Kash's smile was razor thin. You didn't clean up. You dressed the wreckage in flags and fear. Kristen cut in. Mr. Washington, your administration has expanded executive power more than any in modern history. Denzel didn't blink. Because I had to. When others hesitated, I moved. History remembers motion, not stillness. Kash raised an eyebrow. History also remembers the man who tore the brakes off the system just to see if he could still drive. Denzel leaned back, arms wide. I enforce the law. Kash snapped back. You enforce the law selectively. You turned governance into spectacle. Denzel's voice hardened. The courts upheld my decisions. Kash, calm as ever, temporarily until they looked closer. Kristen tried to steady the pace. Is there any common ground between the two of you? Kash spoke first. There is one. A democracy can't afford to wait for elections to fix what's already breaking. Denzel scoffed. You speak like you still run things. And you act like no one else does, Kash returned, unblinking. The screen behind them came alive. A clip played from The View, aired weeks earlier. Kash Patel, seated before a national audience. He's not managing a government. He's orchestrating a purge. He's not eliminating policy. He's eliminating people. That's not leadership. That's theater dressed in patriotism. Denzel didn't turn to look, but the nation did. Kristen faced Patel. Do you stand by those words? He didn't blink. I do. And I'm here because most people didn't hear them the first time or chose not to. His voice sharpened. In the past 18 months, federal agents have conducted over 6,700 undocumented raids, many linked to sealed or retroactive warrants. Over 900 individuals remain unaccounted for. No trial, no release, no record. That's not policy failure. That's human erasure. Denzel smirked. Here we go again. Kash still thinks he runs the intelligence briefings. Laughter rippled through his supporters, but Kash didn't flinch. Funny how loud a man gets when he fears what silence might reveal, Kash Patel said, his voice low but unmistakable. Kristen interjected, Are you accusing President Washington of state-led kidnappings? I'm documenting patterns, Patel replied, his tone surgical. In Arizona, Utah, and Texas, we have affidavits from local sheriffs instructed to block access to Immigration Council. We have FOIA obstructed documents from DHS. You want receipts? I brought them. Denzel cut in, a smirk on his face. You mean the ones funded by George Soros and the DNC? Patel calmly opened a folder and held it up. These are signed by your own appointees. Internal ICE memos, June 3rd, July 18th, October 2nd, explicitly authorizing transport without intake under the guise of national security. I didn't fabricate these, Mr. President. You signed them. Denzel bristled, leaning forward. They were threats. We neutralized threats. Patel's voice turned grave. Threats don't disappear into black sites, Mr. Washington. Enemies do, and when you start deciding who disappears, you're not defending democracy anymore. You're choreographing it as collapse. Kristen tried to pivot. Mr. Patel, some critics argue your language has become more combative than clarifying. Are you speaking for the Democratic Party? No, Patel said evenly. I'm speaking for the Constitution, which doesn't care about party lines. I'm here because someone has to draw the line between rule of law and rule by fear. Denzel's tone sharpened. I'm protecting Americans. Patel didn't flinch. Then explain why over 60% of those detained under Executive Order EU 14221 had no criminal record, and nearly 40% were under the age of 16. The room went silent. Patel closed the folder slowly. I've been accused of many things, but never of hiding children. Kristen exhaled, then asked her next question like a judge delivering a verdict. Let's talk about how each of you used power, and what that says about the presidency. The table went still. The screen behind them dimmed. Patel had drawn a line. Denzel Washington was about to step over it. Kristen's voice was soft but piercing. What limits a president? The law or his conscience? Denzel leaned forward, both elbows on the desk, a grin stretching across his face like a man who knew how to hold a room. They started investigating me before I even took office. Not a single peaceful day, but I still delivered. More jobs, more growth, more strength than anyone since Reagan. He let that hang, then delivered the punchline. You don't check a president who wins, you follow him. A few in the crowd clapped. Kash Patel didn't move. He waited, then cut in, voice steady and cold. They didn't check you because they fear you. They checked you because you feared the Constitution. Denzel blinked, forcing a half laugh, but Patel kept going. Let's count. 6 inspectors general fired. 1 federal judge publicly threatened. You called the FBI scum. You tweeted that the Supreme Court hates America. And you told your supporters to fight like hell after you lost. That's not checks and balances. That's you trying to checkmate the system. Denzel scoffed. Says the guy who redefined executive privilege to cover late-night interns. A few gasps in the room. Patel didn't blink. I was investigated. I complied. I testified. 11 hours. No notes, no distractions. Denzel interrupted. Because I had the people. Patel fired back without missing a beat. You had their attention, but you mistook it for trust. The audience shifted, suddenly unsettled. Kristen leaned back, giving them space to collide. Denzel threw his arm up slightly. So what? I governed. I brought jobs back. I cut taxes. I made deals nobody thought possible. Patel leaned in, voice lower now, but with gravity in every word. You governed like America was a casino, one that owed you chips. But public office isn't a payback plan. He paused, then locked eyes with Denzel. When power doesn't serve the people, it betrays them. Became theater, Patel said, his voice steady. And you weren't the president, Denzel. You were just the main act. Denzel grinned. And you were what? The usher? Patel remained unshaken. No, I was the reminder that the lights eventually come back on. And when they do, people notice who stole the silverware. A murmur rippled through the audience. A tweet from @Politico lit up the live feed. Kash Patel to Denzel Washington. You feared the Constitution. #Summit Showdown. Kristen turned to Patel. So your argument is that power has a moral boundary? Patel nodded. Power without scrutiny breeds vengeance. And vengeance dressed up as justice burns every rule we've ever written together. He turned his gaze back to Denzel. You didn't come here to lead. You came to erase the parts of America that embarrassed you. For the first time, Denzel didn't speak. Patel looked directly at the crowd. This isn't about left or right. It's about decency. I had failures, and I faced consequences. But you declared war on accountability itself. He folded his notes quietly, then looked up again. When the office becomes a weapon, the republic becomes collateral. A beat of silence. Then Kristen broke in. Let's talk about what each of you did with power and what that reveals about the presidency. The lights dimmed, the room shifted, the air cooled sharp with tension. Patel opened a folder on the desk and pulled out a photo, a grainy mugshot of a young Salvadoran man. The image had been digitally altered, skin darkened, tattoos emphasized, eyes blurred. He placed the photo between them, upright and still. "His name is Mario Tejada," Patel began. "Came here at age 9, lived in Maryland. No priors, no gang ties, just a young man working double shifts to support his mother back home." Denzel barely glanced at the image. Patel's tone was clinical. "Your State Department reviewed his asylum case in 2019. They found that under the Convention Against Torture, he had legal grounds to stay. Then your DHS overruled them. He was picked up outside a construction site. No warrant, no counsel." Denzel leaned back, arms crossed. "We didn't have time to gamble. Cities were bleeding. We made a call." Patel didn't blink. "You didn't make a call. You created a narrative. That photo?" He pointed. "Your ICE office lightened the tattoos in the original, darkened his skin, then released it to the media under the headline, MS-13 recruitment threat." Denzel smirked. "That image scared gangs. Mission accomplished." Patel's voice dropped. "No, that image scared voters. That was the mission." He slid another document across the table. "Mario Tejada is still in solitary confinement. 4 years, no trial, no charges. His family's requests ignored under national security exemptions. He has vanished inside a nation that never formally judged him." Denzel scoffed. "That's called protecting borders. Americans first." Patel responded without hesitation. "No, that's called erasing people and pretending they never mattered." Silence. Kristen spoke carefully now. "Governor Patel, are you alleging the executive branch knowingly doctored evidence to justify detention?" Patel didn't blink. "Yes, and I say it knowing exactly what that means." He turned to the camera. "Because power that acts without process and without conscience is tyranny in a suit." Denzel waved a hand, brushing it off. "It's always a lecture with him. Mario Tejada isn't the only story. We dealt with thousands. We stopped the caravans. We ended catch and release. We gave law enforcement their teeth back." Patel folded his hands. "You didn't give law enforcement anything. You gave them confusion. You gave them fear. And you gave them a mandate to prioritize performance over principle." Denzel jabbed a finger across the table. "I kept Americans safe, Denzel," said firmly. Patel shook his head slowly. "No, you kept them scared. Different job." Kristen turned back to the president. "Mr. Washington, why was Mario Tejada never brought to trial if he posed a legitimate threat?" Denzel's face tensed. "Because trials take time. We had intel. We acted." Patel raised an eyebrow. "No, you didn't act on intel. You reacted to polls, to headlines, to Fox segments labeled invasion at the border." Denzel laughed. "So what? We were supposed to wait until someone had got shot? He looked like a gang member. That's all I needed." Patel's eyes turned cold. "Then you rewrote the presumption of innocence into a marketing strategy." He tapped the photo gently. "And now he's a ghost. Not convicted, not acquitted, just disappeared into a system designed to erase inconvenient faces." A low murmur stirred across the studio. Kristen turned slightly to the audience. "Is this how modern executive power should work?" No one answered, but the silence was louder than any verdict. Kristen leaned forward, voice cool and measured. "What happens when the courts can't stop a president?" A flicker of recognition crossed Patel's face. His reply came calmly, like something he had carried too long. "Then we don't have a court. We have a suggestion box." He gestured toward the camera. "The Supreme Court has ruled correctly before, on the census, on DACA, on emoluments. But rulings without enforcement or sermons, you ignored them, and the system blinked." Denzel tilted his head with a smirk. "They ruled with me, and the people agreed." Patel leaned in. "They ruled with your shadow. What they upheld wasn't your policy, it was your chaos. Wrapped in procedure, shielded by delay." He paused, voice lower. "The real law never got to speak. You buried it in appeals. You buried it in contempt. Denzel shrugged, arms relaxed. That's the game. Delay, deny, distract. We played better. Patel didn't flinch. You didn't play. You rigged. You turned the Department of Justice into a campaign war room. You made pardon power a barter chip, and you used the courts as a PR agency when it served you. Denzel lifted a finger. The court never stopped me. Maybe that means I'm the will of the people. The room shifted. A few gasps. A camera zoomed in. Patel's voice came in like a scalpel. That's the line every autocrat practices in the mirror. He held the stare. Kristen interjected softly. Governor Patel, are you saying our institutions failed? Patel nodded just once. No, they were failed by those entrusted to protect them. Courts can write decisions, but they can't storm barricades. They can't arrest a liar in real time. Denzel leaned in, smug. They didn't need to. The country saw through the noise. That's why I'll be back. Patel didn't blink. No, the country saw through the law, not the noise. Because you taught them that rules don't matter. If you just yell louder. Denzel folded his arms. They still voted for me, Patel returned. 47% of the country voted to burn down the house. That's not a mandate. That's arson with polling data. Denzel chuckled. And yet I'm still here, Patel pointed to him, because no one dared to draw the line. Not your party, not the courts. Everyone waited for someone else to flinch. Kristen cut in quickly. And what happens if no one ever draws it? Patel's voice turned calm, heavy, final. Then America becomes a house with no exits, just fire alarms we've trained ourselves to ignore. The studio lights dimmed, not by cue, but as if echoing the mood. Denzel saw the opening. So you're saying democracy is weak? Patel corrected, no, I'm saying democracy is patient. But patience isn't a shield, Patel said quietly. It's a timer. Denzel grinned in, and when the clock runs out, Patel looked directly into the camera. Then we find out if this country was ever a republic or just a stage. The silence that followed was heavier, like the charged air before a storm. Kristen let it settle, then turned toward Denzel. And you believe the courts will not stand in your way? Denzel's smile returned, calm, measured, almost rehearsed. They never have. I made the system show its cards. Now I know how to play the deck. Patel's response came cold and clear. You didn't play the deck. You replaced the dealer. He turned to Kristen, and the game only ends when the players walk away. The camera pans slightly wider. One side fire, the other ice, and at the center a republic blinking. The room hadn't caught its breath before Denzel seized the moment. He adjusted his tie, stepped toward the camera, and let the words fall like a prophecy dipped in gold. I will return. The people demand it. The court won't stop it. A few in the audience shifted. The way he said return carried both promise and warning. Patel leaned back, eyes narrowing. Not with fear, but with memory. Returning doesn't mean redeeming, he said, his voice low and deliberate. You mistake applause for absolution. But noise isn't grace. It's just echo. Denzel chuckled, brushing it off. You confuse tradition with truth, he said, gesturing broadly at Patel. You're the museum tour. I'm the crowd that broke in. Patel didn't blink. You didn't break in. You slipped through a door left open by those who stopped caring. Denzel pressed forward. People are ready to act. You're still waiting to think. We had record rallies, real energy. What did you have? Editorials? Patel nodded once, not denying it. We had time and we wasted it, but at least we didn't weaponize the clock. The room shifted again, colder now. Denzel raised a brow. You call it weaponizing, I call it momentum. Patel leaned in. You call it momentum when the guardrails fall off and the bus keeps rolling. But some of us still remember where the brakes are. Denzel waved him off. Brakes? We're accelerating. That's what America voted for. Patel snapped back. No, they voted while tired, while scared, while misled. You offered the loudest noise in the room, and called it a hymn. You turn rage into ritual. Denzel smiled, and the crowd sang it back. Patel's voice sharpened. They always sing it until the fire reaches the balcony. That's when they realized it wasn't hallelujah. It was a match. Kristen jumped in, her voice steady but firm. And if this isn't just about elections anymore, then what is it about? A pause. Patel exhaled slowly. It's about consequence. Not just ballots, boundaries. When a man breaks the law and wears it like a trophy, democracy doesn't debate. It bleeds. Denzel shrugged. Laws change. People evolve. That's politics. Patel answered softly. People evolve, but they don't survive by lowering standards. They survive by raising them, especially when it hurts. Denzel leaned in, softer now. Pain is part of power. It proves we're alive. Patel cut in sharply. No, pain is supposed to teach, not be taught. The silence returned once more. Then Denzel spoke, deliberate and cool. You fear I'm coming back, because I never really left. I live in the doubt you created, in the cynicism you couldn't kill. Patel's voice was measured, clear. You live in a wound, but this country still has marrow. It still builds, still listens. It doesn't have to follow you to remember who it is. Denzel's grin returned, unwavering. The lights above didn't flicker, but America did. But it will, Denzel said, eyes steady, because chaos is honest, order is a script, and people are done with fiction. Kash Patel stood still, gaze locked. You're right, fiction ends, but truth, he stepped closer. Truth outlives actors. Kristen looked from one to the other, like a pendulum caught mid-swing. Then she turned, to the audience, to the camera, to the pulse humming beyond the studio walls. So which is it then? She asked. Hallelujah or hellfire? Neither man answered, because history was still writing. Outside the debate hall, floodlights clashed with protest signs. Screens lit up with 100 headlines in real time, but none louder than one line already clipped and re-uploaded 1,000 times. Democracy doesn't die, it dissolves, quietly, legally. Within an hour, that sentence made its way into late-night monologues, union newsletters, TikTok duets. Spliced over footage of Capitol riots, deportation bans, body cams, and blank executive orders. Patel's voice echoed, not over movie trailers, but over a country still trying to remember what reality used to be. On MSNBC, Rachel Maddow blinked twice before saying, he just reframed the entire modern presidency in a single sentence. Over on Fox, Jesse Waters grinned. Well, if Patel misses the Oval Office, he just auditioned hard tonight. But it wasn't cable news that carried the weight. It was thousands of young voters reposting the clip with captions like, this isn't about Denzel, it's about what we let power do while we binge-watched history. On Reddit, someone compiled every executive action from both parties that bypassed Congress. The post trended under, we didn't elect kings, we normalized them. Even libertarian forums asked, if checks and balances are ceremonial, are we a republic or just a ritual? Meanwhile, Denzel's campaign blasted out an email calling the event a liberal pity parade. Donations didn't spike. Memes did. The most viral? Denzel seated on a throne made of shredded ballots captioned, the last king of the United States, self-crowned. And yet, the haunting part wasn't the noise. It was the quiet after. That kind of stillness only exists when everyone feels the edge, but no one knows which way the blade will swing. And maybe the final word belonged to a student protester in Philadelphia, holding a cardboard sign under rainlight. I don't want to wait for a vote to tell me if I still live in a democracy. I want to know now.